This is episode 69 of the After Gambling podcast. And in this episode, I'm joined by Nancy, who shares her story, which includes some struggles with the coronavirus lockdown that led her back to the casino. Hey there, and welcome to the After Gambling podcast. My name is Jamie. I'm a former problem gambler. Now I haven't gambled in nearly 10 years, and I do this little podcast to help other people that might want to quit. For today's episode, I'm joined by Nancy Fortune, who comes on and shares her story, which includes a very important message about how the coronavirus lockdowns led her back to the casino. Nancy reached out to me because she wanted to share this story for other people that might be in a similar situation, and to let them know that they aren't alone, and that this struggle of coronavirus is something that we're all kind of dealing with in different ways. So it's really cool to have her come on and share her story, which is so much more recent than maybe some of the other guests. And hopefully it's going to be very relatable for everybody. So without further ado, here's my discussion that I had with Nancy Fortune. Obviously, you reached out a couple weeks ago. I'm glad you did. I think you have a really important message, and we'll definitely get into some of those things later on. But let's start off. Just give me some background. Catch me up. What's your background with gambling? When did you first start? What were some of those highs, the lows?
Well, basically, I remember being about 27. I'm 52 now. About when I was 27 is when I remember really gambling to the point like I was taking my paycheck and couldn't wait to get paid so that I could, take most of it out to the casino here in San Diego. There's several large casinos in the area, Indian casinos. And so, I just remember that being the time frame in my life where I was really gambling. But I'd like to start with when I first walked into a casino. It was with my sister, and it was way before that. And I did not have any concept of why I would put a $20 bill in a machine. At that point, I was walking through the casino with her, just not even knowing what I was looking at. And she was in kind of a remote area, and this Indian casino was really the only, it was basically in Lemoore, California, where there's the Navy base, but there's nothing else out there. It's like, that's the only thing to do. So I just remember walking around with her thinking, and I remember her saying, just play this one. And I thought, well, why would I don't even understand what's going on. Why would I even put money into this thing that I don't even understand how to use? So I remember feeling like that before I was a gambler. Like, why would I even do this? Like, not that I was above it or anything. I just thought, I don't understand what's going on. And so I don't want to play because I don't know how to do it, and so that's how I, remember the first time I walked through a casino. But then later on, we went again, not to that particular one, but to a different one in San Diego. It had to have been months later. And we were playing, and I was watching her, and, and she said, just play this one. I'll show you what to do. And I remember hitting the button because I only play slots, which it's because I'm no good at tables. I just don't, I'm the one that says, okay, wait, stop. I don't know what 7 + 5 is. So I just am better on, I feel better on the slots anyway. So I was watching her, and then I sat down and played, and I said, I don't understand what's happening. I didn't know how the pay lines were working or anything like that. And that was back in the day where you could bet. Now they make you bet minimum 50 cents or $1, but back then you could choose how many lines. So you had to kind of decide how many lines you want to play, with the denomination that you were playing. So I didn't understand it. I was just hitting the button, and something was happening. But it was interesting how your brain just automatically starts to figure it out. Like, okay, I get it now. When you get 3 oranges, it's going to give you 25 cents or whatever. So eventually, that day, I hit a hand payout of $800. And of course, I didn't even see it happen. the machine froze up and I couldn't hit the button anymore. And then she realized that I had just hit a jackpot. So she explained that to me. So I didn't know what was going on. I'm just standing around going, okay, whatever. So the lady comes and pays me. And I thought, okay, this is fun. It was at that point when I hit the $800 jackpot that I thought, oh, wow, this is interesting. Like now I may not know what's going on. I might, can figure it out, but it was just an easy hit of money in that moment. And then from then on, I just remember, going back and playing on my own, I didn't, I'm one of these that don't like to take too many people with me. I avoid it at all costs because I just, if I don't want to leave or if I don't want to move to a different part of the casino, I don't want to have to follow you around. It's just easier. So yeah, 25 years later, here we are talking about it. But the reason I reached out to you, Jamie, is because I had a lot of things have changed for a lot of people during the pandemic. I usually went to my favorite watering hole at night and had a drink or two or three. And since the pandemic, I've stopped doing that. And now I feel really good. I feel better. I'm not doing that anymore and I don't want to. So that is really something I'm working on too. But also the casinos were closed. So that was not an option until they opened up here recently. And, being locked in our proverbial boxes all day, the first thing I thought was, oh my gosh, it's something to do. I mean, if the movies had opened first, I would have gone there. You know what I mean? It was just, at first it was like, I just got to I got to do something different. And I just immediately went out to, the first casino that opened here in San Diego and, was back in it again, even though it'd been like 2 months and I hadn't really missed it at all. But, just a matter of a habit and, something to do that's, I just thought, and by the way, I just want to say that, what is working for me or what I feel is important for me may not be the status quo of what, is defined as, how to combat this. 'Cause I actually am of the camp that, and I know that people are going to say, you have a disease and therefore you need to treat it like a disease. I feel that I know that in that moment when it's just me all by myself and I'm about to make that decision, I could have all the support in the world. I could have all the barriers up that, like putting my money somewhere else or having a sponsor, all this. I could have all that. But I know deep down that in that moment when I'm about to make that decision on whether I go or not, it's on me in what I need to do, in my mind to have that conversation with myself. So sometimes I feel like if we label it a disease, then we give the disease the power and we don't give ourselves the power to make that choice. And I really ultimately think for me, I know I have the power to make that choice. I've lost it along the way. I've let it get suppressed along the way. I've just kind of gotten on the train and not been able to get off. But I know I can stop things if I want to. I know I can change behavior if I want to. And yes, going to group and things like that, you will always learn something valuable. You will always be able to take away something important that you can remember. And I'm not opposed to going to GA or anything like that. I'm just saying that if I were to do everything I'm supposed to in the terms of having a disease, I still know that in that moment I can decide one way or another. So ultimately it has to be the conversation I have with myself and how I handle that when nobody else is looking, when it's 11 o'clock at night and I can get away with it. Do you know what I mean?
No, I absolutely do. And that's the whole disease model I've kind of gone through, and if you listen to all the episodes, I mean, I've believed in that, I've not believed in that, and I don't even know if it's a belief or not. I think in some ways, I think we see things and we classify certain things with disease that maybe don't always match up with my take now. And but some of the things that you said, I mean, it's like, ultimately it's my responsibility, right? Like you said, if I want to go to the poker table when we finish this recording, nothing's really going to stop me. My wife may try to run and grab me, but ultimately it comes down to me. And that's where I do differentiate, where it's something that I ultimately am in control of. And it's my responsibility, as you said, to do the things and to put myself in situations. The one thing, obviously, and I think you're already doing this, and maybe it's subconsciously, but I mean, just listening to the podcast is listening for other people, getting insight from other people. And that's where, like, I think the important thing, the takeaway is, we don't have to do it alone. I mean, you mentioned alone earlier, doing it by yourself, going when you weren't with people. Like, those are signs and symptoms that I did the exact same thing, which was, and I struggled. And I'm curious about your background. I mean, you said over 25 years of gambling, like, were there times that you wanted to quit, but you weren't able to? I mean, that was my experience. Was there were times I'd be like, man, this sucks. Like, I want to stop. And I actually would try. But when I tried to do it myself alone, I wasn't able to. And that's where, like, everything changed once it got blown out into the open. And then all of a sudden I had GA, I had these other support systems. I started looking for new information. And now all of a sudden my ability to make that choice when that came down to that moment became so much easier for me. And so I guess reflect on that. Like, over those 25 years, what were some of your thoughts? What was going through your head? Were you trying to quit actively at times, or what were the highs? What were the lows?
Well, let me say, to start, having that family dynamic that you have is definitely an influencer, and definitely there for you to remember. I've listened to your podcasts. I'm like halfway through, so I know that halfway through all of them. So I know that your family is a huge deterrent. So to make sure that, you just, that's like number one, I think. So for a lot of people, though, like myself, I don't have a significant other. I've never had children. So I don't have that kind of like force that says, you're going to lose that. I only have me, you know what I mean? Like, ultimately. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I think that up until recently, since we've been forced to like stop some behaviors that maybe haven't been good for us, before that, the times when I wanted to stop was when I had really big losses. And I think you're just like, what did I do? And I've got to stop spending my paycheck, and living off of Top Ramen. Yeah, but it's not been like it is right now, where I'm cognitively aware that, because another issue that goes through my head is, I believe if we want to spend our money on, fishing tackle, you can easily spend your paycheck on that. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's more to me about how I've been treating money in my life, and how I've been letting that get to a point where I'm scrambling, to make bills or something like that. Because let's face it, we can spend all of our paycheck on whatever it is that is the thing, whether it's shopping, whether it's, drugs, whether it's alcohol. I just was at a park the other day, and I sat, I was there for most of the day enjoying the park, and, all these guys come out with all these fancy airplanes and it's like everybody has a habit that could cost you if you don't, but it's putting that into perspective. Like, it's the thing that I've chose to spend my money on is, sitting in front of a machine and feeding this machine. That, just saying that, I don't even like that I say that. It's like, at least if I'm jumping out of an airplane, there's an experience there, But,
well, and there's an experience with gambling. And I love your point on you bringing up of fishing, and I'm 100% on board with this. I think we all have our things that we escape to. And I'm a big believer that the intent or reason why we go and do those things, let's use fishing. You can go buy the boat, you can buy all the rods, the reels, you can spend all that time and money on that habit. And you can end up in a situation where you don't have money and time for other things in your life, where it becomes destructive. You're going there because you don't like your job, you don't like your family, you're sad because you don't have support system, whatever that case may be. Now you take that same guy or a different guy that's spending that exact same money, and that is the thing that he is passionate about, that enriches his life and makes it better. He goes and he's around other friends that fish, and it's the thing that he looks forward to. I think why we do things, and I agree with you. I think any product that we have on the planet, shopping, the gym. I always point out, I mean, you have guys that go to the gym because they want to be in good shape. Same with females. They value health and they want to live a long, healthy life. And you have other people that those same things. It's an emotional escape from life. And I struggle with saying, okay, hey, let's just fix this product, right? Like for us, it's gambling. Like, let's just remove gambling and our lives are going to get better. That's, for me, I think that's only part of it. I think the real thing is figuring out, okay, like, obviously, we use these products in ways that aren't helpful for us. You play it forward. I mean, I'm just now 10 years later, I'm going to pay off. I have a positive net worth again, financially. Yeah. It did bad things in my life that other products didn't do for me, for whatever reason. But understanding what those underlying things were, why did I want to go and do it alone? Why was I trying to what was I trying to get away from? Now that for me has been empowering. And I think that's kind of what you're saying, which is it's not necessarily just the one thing. We have to understand, look at this bigger picture of not kind of just treating a specific product. Does that kind of resonate or?
Yeah. And I think that, cause you're recovered for 10 years now, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm just stepping into this right now. And I think what I wanted to talk to you today is because I think that when people are at the point I am right now, where it's been a week, and you're just kind of like thinking, this is going to be, what's the point? Like, am I really going to be able to go a different way with my time, my energy, my money? It's really hard to put those tennis shoes on and get out the door and walk around the block. So, I just want to encourage anybody who's listening to this that I'm really telling myself every day, it's a battle every day to do something, constructive with my time. However, I just hit a wall like the other day where I was like, oh, I've been so good, I'm doing air quotes, quote unquote right now, with all my time that I just want to watch Netflix all day. Like, we have to understand that you just can't be on the straight and narrow all the time. You have to realize the feelings that are going through. Like, if I just need to veg, you have to understand what that is. And it's not, it's not sustainable to just do the right thing, quote unquote, 24 hours a day. We have to be able to say, you know what, I need to, decompress, and this is how I'm going to decompress. I'm going to choose maybe Netflix instead of the casino. But don't forget that it's just too big of an elephant for people who are in the spot, like they're trying to do something different, to say that, well, what am I going to do to decompress? What am I going to do to disconnect? And that's kind of like, I remember before I started gambling, I used to run. I ran a marathon when I was 25. And, I did all those things. But again, back then I was doing them for a different purpose than just myself. It was kind of like the group I was in and the people I was hanging around. So I was kind of doing it for them too. You know how you do that?
Yep.
So, I think the bigger picture that I want to talk about today is, how do we get to that conversation with ourselves about who we are and what we think is important for us either way? Because there's going to be days you want to veg out and do something and just do nothing constructive. You just want to stay in your pajamas and watch TV. So, for me, gambling was that vegging out and zoning out. where I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could do what I wanted. I didn't have to follow rules. People catered to me because I was a Diamond member. You got the perks, and we can talk about the marketing and the perks and all that, but really it's basically how you feel about you in that moment as just an individual, not a father, not a husband, just about you. So
yeah. And that's, I was the same. Being at the poker table, there was a sense of calmness where it was just like, I would go and shut off every other thing in my life. Now I look back and I was shutting off every other feeling, every uncomfortable feeling that I felt. Well, that was my way of going. I basically had my phone turned off. I knew I was going to be there for 8, 9, 24 hours, whatever the case may be. And it was that escape. And the other thing that you mentioned, the one thing I really like, and that's why I especially like, I love having you on at the stage you are, because you bring me back and you pull me back to that stage. And I remember sitting in my GA room, South Akron, and looking around, and there's these guys that have 100 years combined clean time, 1980, 1982, 1984, 1996. Like, and I'm thinking, man, like, am I ever going to get there? Am I like, and at the same time, I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? My life today was kind of stressful. I would love nothing better than to go not feel any stress at the poker table. Like I had those, and like, I remember constantly thinking, is this really forever? Am I going to do this? Like, can I really do this forever? Do I want to do this forever? Like that was a constant thing playing in my mind. And I even tell a lot of people, the space between 1.5 years to 2.5 was the hardest for me. Because I think at that point I was starting to not using poker. I didn't have that escape. When you talk about like COVID's brought out a lot of things, it's taken away a lot of our escapes, and we've had to sit there and sit with ourselves. And it took me 1.5 to 2 years to really get to that point. And I felt really down and really depressed. And those were the times I was like, man, am I really going to do this? I like playing poker. I like, there were all those things, but the one thing that helped me, and that's why I do this podcast still, is I saw people that were ahead. I saw those guys that were 30 some years, and I saw what their life looked like. And I said, all right, like that looks pretty good. Like they're not worried about money. They're not stressed out about these different things. And they dealt with some of those other things. And that's why, like I said, I do the podcast because I want to showcase. And that's why, like I said, I love going backwards because it's easy. Like you say, like it's easy to look and say, okay, 10 years, like, oh, all right, at this point, well, isn't it just easy for you? And I still go through those same emotions, but it really helps. And hopefully this helps other people to realize like, yeah, it was weeks in. Even a few years ago, 2-3 years ago, I was really depressed, really, really depressed. I should have, and that's where I think we've been sold, or we believe this thought that like life, you just hit this point and it's all magical and rainbows, right? Like unicorns and rainbows. Yeah. But the reality is we have these ups and downs. And the key is, I think, and you pointed out, is like for you, like going and watching Netflix for 7 or 8 hours, cool. That's a healthier escape. And you identify, like you say, okay, hey, I'm feeling these things. Like this is where I would normally go to the casino. And then you balance it out. Okay, on one hand, I can go to the casino and here's the pros and cons of that. Here's this other thing. I can get a lot of that same escapism without all of the risk involved. So it's a really good conversation. I love it. So yeah, continue on.
Yeah. So something that just came to my mind is that, when we have that feeling, we go on autopilot, click, and then all of a sudden we're just in the zone while we're driving to the casino. And you wish, there's been times where I'm driving there and I'm like, and then when it goes bad, and I tell myself, okay, the next time, just don't point your truck in that direction. You tell yourself anything just to not go, but the autopilot and the habit is so much there that you just zone it out, even on the drive up there, And so one of the things that I've tried to do, especially with drinking, because even though the bars have been closed, the grocery stores are open. So you can get it. But if you can stop for about 5 seconds and just, have the feeling of whatever it is you're feeling. And, I'm not a big, journey person or feeling person. I'm not big on that. But you need to stop and realize what your body is physically doing right now. Like you're having this moment where you're jonesing, for lack of a better word, and you just need to stop and acknowledge, look around and acknowledge, okay, that's what this is. And normally I absolutely can do one of 5 different things. I absolutely can do that and nobody would know. I could go to the casino. I could go for a walk. I could, watch a movie. I could call a friend. I could do many things in that moment to get away from this feeling. And for me, what's going to be important is being able to control what I do in that moment. That's the moment I'm talking about, where you're about to make a decision that may or may not have a positive or negative, you could win at the casino, and that you could label that as a positive, outcome. But, just in that moment, I have lost control of I've lost control in that moment, and I want to get it back, because there was a time before I was a gambler that I stopped and looked around and said, okay, what's happening? And, we could talk about all the money lost, and we could talk about all the relationships lost and all the hurt and all that stuff. But really, the biggest thing for me is I've lost that control of my own senses and ability to not just get on autopilot. And that bothers me. And I want to get that back, whether it's I spend money on shopping or I spend money on, a fancy dinner, whatever it is. I need to be able to say, okay, I really do want to go to that fancy restaurant and have that experience or whatever, or I really do want to jump out of an airplane and spend $500 doing that. Whatever it is, I just want to get that control back in my mind and not just get on autopilot.
Yeah. And in so many ways, autopilot is one of those things. I mean, it's a feature. I mean, it's something that helps us out in so many ways in our life. I mean, if we had to actually think about every decision, and that's why a lot of times, habits become habits. They help us. We don't have to think about what we have to do in each and every moment. What we have to realize with obviously with gambling with us is, how do we interrupt that? Because that's really what we're trying to do is, okay, when we get that, what is the cue? What's the trigger? What's the reward? And that reward system, and focusing in on that. And that's, I don't know if you've heard the episodes with me, but mine was, and it was always while I was driving, and it was always while being by the highway. Why? Because once they took away online poker, I had to get on the highway to drive to the places. And so I'd just be out running errands. And the thing that helped me, and it was empowering for me, was to remind myself that I had a choice. And I didn't try to just block it out and say, no, you're not going. Like, I would say to myself, I would say, yes, you could go, and you're choosing not to. I'm choosing not to. I would say that out loud to myself in the car, and I would literally high five myself for making a good decision in that moment and continue to drive down the road. And it was one of those small things. Over time, that pattern interrupt continued and continued and continued. And all it was when I reached those moments, I started telling myself a different story, which was, you have a choice here. And then it was really up to me. If I made that choice, I was like, okay, like now you have a choice, but you're choosing opposite. And fortunately for me, that worked for me. And I never got on the highway, went to the casino. I haven't done that now in, like I say, almost 10 years. But it is, and that's where it's empowering. And that's why I struggle with the disease model, because that's kind of like, all right, if you say, okay, you have this disease, you're stuck with it. Like, that doesn't empower me to have control over it. Now, obviously you can talk about GA and other things being medicines. And I think there's some truth to that. I think there's value in that. But I like to look at it more like going to the gym or doing other like healthy things. It's like, okay, when you do those things, like, they pay off, especially when you do them over time, but it's not necessarily a disease that's completely out of our control. And it is that ability to regain control in our lives that empowers us. And it sounds like that's what you're ultimately looking for, right?
Yeah, Jamie, I really think that success for me, the definition would be getting, when I know that I've reached that moment where I've got that control back. And so, yeah, it's just a personal thing with me. And listen, I've listened to your podcast. I've listened to lots of other podcasts that have nothing to do with gambling at all. You can always learn something from conversation. And I'm definitely not putting the kibosh on any kind of group or anything like that. For example, I'm not a very spiritual person, but I also attend church every now and then just to hear a message. I just think there's always there's always something you can take away from any conversation that you didn't think about before, because none of us have all the answers. So I really do like, just getting more knowledge on any topic. So if somebody's struggling right now with how do I stop? I don't want to go again. I've spent all my money up there again. How do I stop? And sometimes when you're in group or something like that, you might hear, just keep going. You'll be fine. It'll get better. These kind of, things that people say because people want actual, like, oh, I want to physically know what to do next. Do I go left? Do I go right? I mean, people need steps like in that moment to do you understand what I'm saying? It's more than just hang in there or just, it'll get better in time or stuff. Those things don't help in that moment. You actually need, we actually need to talk about, okay, you need to don't do anything for 10 minutes. Don't make any decision for 10 minutes. Just get past the 10-minute mark, right? Yeah. Sit in your vehicle for 10 minutes and don't turn on the engine. And then go to the next step, right? I mean, what do people do to stop that behavior is really in those first few steps. And so for me, it is going to be stop, sit for about 10 minutes and get past that feeling that urge you have, whether it's to pick up a drink or, basically I told my 13-year-old niece the other day, I said, honey, you're going to make lots of mistakes in your life. Auntie has made a lot of mistakes in her life. And I'm still going to make mistakes. But if you have to stop and ask yourself if this is a good decision, it's probably not. That's the only thing I can help you with. I'm never going to be able to tell her not to do something because she's going to be alone at sometimes making decisions for herself as a young girl. And, it's just, if you have to stop and think, is this a good idea? It's probably not a good idea in general.
No, that's great advice. And that's like you're talking about the 10 minutes. I don't know if you've ever heard the visual I love. And I heard from somebody was surfing the urge. It's just like surf. It's like a wave. It comes and like the wave doesn't go on forever. The wave runs out. So all you have to do is, commit to that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And the beautiful thing about these things, these knowledge pieces, they work in all areas of life. Like it's going to help you with gambling, but it's also going to help you. If you don't want to eat sweets, that's something I'm working on right now is like not eating as many sweets. And so you just literally have to surf that urge. Work. If you say, oh, hey man, I'm so annoyed with this work. I just want to go do something else that's more enjoyable. Surf that urge. And then 10, 15 minutes later, all of a sudden clarity comes in. And I use things like walking. There's so many different things. And that's, again, I'm with you. I agree that we need to focus more on the tactical things. That's what I try to do.
Things, yeah. Which
is just present. And that's, I always try and say, like, I will only say things that I do in my life because I know how they work or they don't work. And a lot of it is that tactical. There are things like, the barriers to money, like that's an obvious one. And yet I didn't do it. I had oversight on my money. I always have since we've been married. And even before I said, here's my bank account. Just a couple of weeks ago, I showed her a screenshot. Hey, here's the bank account. It's just, for me, it's a peace of mind. And I think it goes both ways, but knowing that accountability is there. But again, it just comes back to these little learnings, these little teachings. And so many times I think in our head, we build things up to be this big monster. And then we have to do these big grand gestures. But so many times it does come down to just surfing that urge and just doing those little things. There's a book called The Slight Edge, and I love it. And his principle is that nothing we do in life is really all that hard. Nothing we do in life is really like it's all pretty easy. It's just easy to do it or not to do it. And so it's like, hey, you're going to go to the gym. Well, it's easy to go. It's easy not to go. And we build these things up in our heads.
Yeah.
But when we really kind of break it down, and that's where I do think, I think we're designed to work together to find other people, to find others. That's why stories are undefeated. Stories rule the world. Stories make change. Stories help people because you can latch on and say, okay, that person, like they're saying something similar. You're talking about the $20 became a hand pay. Like every problem gambler, every person that's gotten to a point where they have a problem with gambling remembers that big win. We all do. I was the same way. You talked about like the $20. Why would I spend? That was me. Like, why would I spend $20? I worked my ass off for this money. Like, why would I give it away? And then I saw problems with gambling firsthand. Well, I'm never going to do that. Like we go through, but when we have these stories, now all of a sudden it's like, now we have somebody else that we can draw upon. And I think it does help to look at somebody else and say, okay, they felt the same way. You have that a little bit of connection, and then you can also learn. And it is, because otherwise we're going on kind of blind faith, right? It's like, if I put all this out there and it was just a theory, I was just some kind of person that studied gambling, like, who knows if it's true or not? Yeah. Like I say, I can speak to my things, and that's why I think you coming on and sharing your story is awesome, because you're going to be people that resonate. Your story resonates with them. They're like, yeah, what she said right there is perfect and spot on. And I agree with that. And now I can understand, and I'm going to try and do some of those things. So,
yeah. And listening to your podcast, I started with the first one and, made my way through. And it was funny because I was like walking and listening, and I was like, yeah. And I'm, talking out loud, and people are thinking I'm losing my mind. I'm like, yeah, I did that. I felt that. And it's kind of nice to know that, you like when you're up and you think, now I can if I just left right now, everything would be fine, that kind of thing. So those feelings, yes, are definitely good to know that other people are feeling that. And that is something that, that's why I reached out to you in your podcast. Cause as you're researching and getting a community of people around you to talk to about it, there's going to be people who don't resonate with you. I listened to something else that didn't resonate with me, and I stopped listening. But you will find a way, or you will find somebody who, so you will find an avenue that helps you if you keep looking. I mean, let's face it, the marketing is absolutely, you cannot get away from it. I can't download an app on my phone, a crossword puzzle, without the ads being slot machine ads. It's everywhere. So just to be able to say, well, I gotta just quit this behavior and stop it. That's not enough. I mean, the billboards, I have a guy that calls me from one of the casinos to get me to come back, that kind of a thing. There's a lot of, external, and it's portrayed as, this is the good fun time to have, and by the way, they don't put the billboards in the ritzy parts of town. They're only in do you know, does anybody notice that? Like, the billboards for casinos are not in Rancho Santa Fe, which is one of our nicer, in Del Mar, one of our nicer areas here in San Diego. They don't have the billboards for the casinos over there. They're in the lower income areas. And there's a reason for that, so maybe, just to, just have, the marketing is so big, and having a plan to, tackle it one-on-one with yourself, regardless of all the draws that are there to keep you coming back to anything, whether it be gambling or anything, is big. So that's just, again, my personal challenge to myself is to see, 9 million billboards to just go back, to keep coming back, and everything's fine and happy and rainbows and butterflies. I still have to have that conversation with myself in that moment, so I know you're into marketing, right?
Yeah. And I know all about that stuff. And that's why, even when you're talking about the ads, I mean, there are things that we can do that, and yeah, it's frustrating, right? I mean, it's one of those things that all of a sudden you make this change, all of a sudden it seems like everything around you is kind of conspiring against you. Like, and it can feel like that. And marketing and ads, I mean, they follow us around the internet. You search for shoes, and all of a sudden every website you go to is showing you the shoes. So there are some things you can do there with ad blockers, which are a popular thing. You can also change some of the settings, like a lot of the social media accounts. Like, if you go in and delete your data, or you can request your data, you can get those things. I mean, the casinos, you can reach out and say, hey, look, self-exclude me, or don't call me. Like there's some of those things. And it sucks that we have to go through and take a lot of those steps. I wish there was an easy button, right? That we could just push and be like, hey, I'm no longer interested in this across the board. Shut it all off. That would be wonderful. But the other side of that is, it's just not going to be the case. And so we have to look at what we can do personally. And that's where I like even the billboards. Yeah. And that's why I'm a big fan of like telling the full story. And that's what, every time you see a billboard, you can think whatever you want to think. I mean, you could think, okay, hey, I remember the time I turned $20 into $800. You can think of those wins, or you can tell to yourself the full story, which is, and then I kept going, and then I lost this, and I lost this, and I lost this, and this got worse in my life. Like, and so you can use those billboards. And again, it just comes down to, it's like that reprogramming again. It's like that habit loop. when we see it, we can reprogram and it takes time, right? But it's one of those things that if we're kind of open to and start to reframe those stories that are told. I mean, I'm a marketer, and yes, my number one thing I'm good at is reframing a story, taking a story that one side is trying to tell one way and just flip it. And that's really what we have to do in a lot of ways with gambling ads. When we stop gambling, is you just have to tell yourself a different story, because if you continue to kind of just take the story that's presented at face value, it's going to resonate. Like, I mean, they're great marketers. They're people that are great marketers for high-end shoes and homes. And that's another thing, this COVID, I mean, it's exposing how ill-prepared we are as a society, and how much we spend, and we've put too much value into things that at the end of the day really don't matter. But yeah, the marketing is something that it needs to be addressed. Obviously, that's kind of one of those next projects I'm working on, to kind of find some way to improve it. I'm not a fan of just blanket banning everything, because I think, we'll find a way to find it. And I also think if you're going to have a product that's legal, it's kind of weird to say, well, it's legal, but you can't tell anybody about it. So I'm conflicted there. But as far as for helping problem gamblers get away from it, that's something that, again, to your point, we need a plan. Like, hey, if you want to stop seeing ads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, done, or at least better. So I like that. And that's something maybe I'll work on myself. So thank you. Yeah.
I just think it would help. What you just said about all these blockers, I didn't know about. Yes, I still believe it's on me in that moment, but at the same time, it would help just to, I know self-exclusion is an option, but I also know, after talking to the security at the casino I do go to, they say there's probably 20, 25 people in here right now who are self-excluded. They don't do anything about it. So again, it's back on you, and that is...
You're excluded from winning. You're not excluded from playing.
Yes. So understand that. It's not as easy as just throwing up that roadblock. I mean, this is about getting in, the pandemic has really, really put a lot of people in a position to look at what they were doing with their time. And, whether it doesn't matter what it is, but a lot of people have, stepped back and say, I really don't need X, Y, or Z. And I know that now because a lot of people were on autopilot with a lot of different things. And I think it's a really good time right now to evaluate, for ourselves individually, what we really want to do and what we really think is important. So, and it's not about just doing the right thing every single second of the day, because that can be exhausting. We are just a human being of flesh and blood, and we have to just remember that, unless being 100% atypical, crazy, just everything's perfect all the time, that'll send you over the cliff too. So you have to just understand what's going on. How you feel in any moment is important to understand, whether it's a good feeling, a bad feeling. Your feelings are a reflection of what's going on. And so I think there just needs to be more about how to handle that in that moment. Like, I could wake up, I'm 52, I could wake up and have a bad morning and not even know why. It just could be the weather, or just just dealing with, okay, gosh, I'm feeling a little cranky today. Maybe I should, not be around too many people right now until I, get out of it. And I have told friends and family before, I'm really cranky right now. So,
That's awareness. And that's what we need to have. Like, right. And then also give ourselves some grace and say, it's not going to be perfect.
Yes.
And that's why I don't know if you've ever listened or read any of Mark Manson's stuff, but he talks about, we just shouldn't seek out a life with no problems. We should seek out a life with good problems, because a life with no problems is not a reality. And that's something that's really resonated with me. And so it is, whenever I have problems, I think, well, man, these are really good problems to have. And it's, again, that reframing the story. So I want to ask you, so you brought up kind of the person you want to be. Let's fast forward. Like, just what's the story you want to tell? 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Like, what are the things you're hoping that kind of this talk and some of these things that come out of COVID, when you look back and you say, wow, COVID was a great thing in my life personally, because it led me to this point. What's that point for you?
Well, just having control again of my finances and just being responsible, what I define as responsible with my finances. It's not, a global definition, but, just to be able to not be in the position that I am in today, which is, very little resources and money because of my behavior for the last 25 years. I know that got me here, and a lot of people are struggling, but a lot of people have money and they're, doing, fine that way. Maybe they're struggling in different ways, but I would like to leave this earth knowing that I tackled this thing. And the thing, whether that's drinking or gambling, because, I drink too much too, or I have, been that person. And I really don't like how I feel. I don't like what it does to me physically, mentally, and all of that. So I'd like to be standing on a mountain one day going, okay, I went through that, just, that was my thing. And I figured it out, and I tackled it. I got control of it, because everybody's going to have a thing. And, I'm still going to make mistakes, that's the thing, is you have to understand that it's not about just being perfect from here on out. It's about knowing there's something that you don't like about what you're doing, whether that's gossiping, smoking, drinking, whatever it is that doesn't make you feel good internally and, is something that you're avoiding. For me, I just want to be able to say, it was ugly. I did this thing, I got through it, and I got my control back. And to me, that's success, because it's not just about the money. It's about being able to make decisions that I want to make for myself that are good for me, regardless of what anybody else around me is thinking. So doing what I want to do is important to me. And I could decide to gamble, but I don't like how I feel when I do. So that's something I'm addressing. So just being able to totally tackle that and get, know it's in my rear view mirror. Getting healthier. I need to lose about 40 pounds. So, that's also on the table. And these things come in multiples, by the way, Jamie. I mean, I'm dealing with the alcohol, the weight, and the gambling. So I've got all the majors on the table going, okay, now this is a big elephant, so sometimes it can be like, I don't want to be perfect. It's exhausting, so,
you don't need to be perfect. That's my takeaway. So you asked for an action plan. So ready or not, here's going to be my action plan for you. It's a 2-step process. You ready? So number 1, and this is going to be one that I want you to keep retelling yourself this story on and on, those moments that when you have those moments that aren't perfect, because I'm going to today, in the space of today. I mean, by the time I go to lunch today, I'm going to do something that's not. The key, and I see this, you talk about weight loss. I mean, I lost a bunch of weight on keto and I've gained a little bit of it back, but it is, the battle with sweets and some of those types of things. And I definitely have fallen into the trap with gambling, and then also with food and some other areas. It's like, now that I had one Oreo, I'm going to have 15. And so that's one of those things. So when you notice, and that's one of those kind of habit loops that we get in with perfection, right? We say, okay, since it's not perfect, then we might as well just go all out.
So what's the point? Yeah. What's the point of fixing any of it?
We do that whole, what's the point? And so I think first of all, is when we realize that we all think that, and we all do that with our own little things. And the reality is that one slip up, whether it's gambling, drinking, whatever, the goal is obviously to do something well. And if we capture those moments, hey, we're going to have moments that maybe we're not perfect. I mean, that's the reality. The goal is, let's make sure that we create systems or processes or thought processes which allow us to get out of that moment and back into the moment that we like. And you talked about earlier, when we're in our mindset, which is kind of like a more, I don't know what the proper word is, but our right mind is what I'll use. we know that we don't want to gamble. We don't want to do these things. It's in those little moments in those small moments that we cause a lot of problems for ourselves. And then it spirals. So that's number one, is know that you're not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be perfect, and expect those things to come around, but also plan for them. And that's going to lead into number two, which is number two. And this has been the one thing that's helped me more than anything else. I mean, one, we've talked and doing this type of public stuff or just talking. I mean, this is the two of us talking, right? But obviously other people will listen in and it's going to help them. Get involved. If you're not already on Reddit, I mean, Reddit is the number one. I think it's one of the greatest tools on the planet right now, because you have support groups at your fingertips 24/7 of groups and people that are like-minded. You can go on there. I'm on ones with keto, with fasting. I'm on there with problem gambling. Like, I'm on there with being a father. Like, those groups, those people, I mean, talk about the stories that we read it and we're like, wow, that's right. Like, I did that today, and like, it helps us. And then, okay, they have a learning from it. It's full of just experiences and learnings. But the key is that we don't just go in and kind of absorb it all, but we also commit and talk back and help other people and support other people and pay it forward in that way. Because going and telling somebody else, hey, you know what, I had that same thing. And you know what, this one little trick that's working for me is this, whether it's food, whether it's gambling, whether it's anything, finance, that helps us so much by paying it forward. I'm a firm believer of that. And within the space of Reddit, you have all those abilities to find a group that you're going to have people, and in a week or two, you're going to have people that come in behind you so you can help them come through and pave that path. You're going to have people that are way ahead of you and just slightly ahead of you. And everybody's working towards that same goal and has that knowledge. And you're just going to be so kind of overwhelmed and just full of insight and knowledge, and a support group to go to. So that's your two-step action plan from Jamie on the After Gambling podcast, is be okay with perfection and then really dive into those communities. I'm telling you, like, I've seen it personally. Like, my life has gotten so much better in those areas that I really dive into. So that's my task for you.
I love it. And, you know, I know what Reddit is, but I don't have it on my phone. I don't have, I haven't, dove into that, but,
it's free. And you remember 90s forums of the 90s? It's a 90s forum that is trendy with different, like, it is the exact same thing as a 90s forum.
And I can see right now, just not even being in it yet, but I can feel already that you could probably get in there and just really be, painfully honest about what's going on in your head. Like, for example, hey guys, I just cashed my check. I have all the cash in my wallet right now, and I'm struggling because I really want to go play. You know, I mean, I'm assuming you can be really honest with, people in this forum and not get the standard replies of, oh, it'll be okay. I mean, like, somebody might say, okay, look, here's my phone number. I don't even know if that's possible, but like, just, I don't know. I mean, being painfully honest is also part of it too. And really saying the words out loud helps. And
it's accountability. You're going to have some people, and you're going to have, and when you put that out there, you're going to have people say, yeah, I get it. Like, and you'll have some people, hey, just like hanging there, like, make it through, like, or I made it through, or they'll have tactical advice. Hey, when I get that, I do this. I just looked it up, 6.3 thousand members. So you have over 6,000 people around the world. And it is, I mean, when you post something like that, within minutes, definitely within an hour, you're going to have responses from people. And then that's why I also say, go on and do the same, and like, just kind of surf it. And obviously we need to have barriers up for ourselves and be mindful that we don't need to be on there all day, every day. I've done that. But it is one of those things that awareness of just the like-mindedness, it's huge. And you're going to love it. I know you're going to love it. Like I say, everybody's kind of afraid of it, or it's weird at first. It was for me. It's my wife's like, where are you on Reddit? I'm like, it's a 90s forum. It's literally a 90s forum. It's a chat forum. But when you connect and when you get those micro groups of these people that are focused on this one thing, right? This one specific thing in life. And there is a Reddit group for anything. If you're into like juggling cats, I'm sure there's like juggling cats.
Okay. So well, that's a good resource. And I love it. And, I'll definitely, do that today. And, but yeah, I mean, I think for me, the 10-minute rule is a good rule to, just stop and get through, just get through the thought process that's going on in my head. I think that's going to be really a big part, because I can talk myself into anything. And, and the problem is I'm very ambitious type of person. So I will try anything once, so, and I also think I can handle anything too. And that's, so whatever the outcome is, if I do go and gamble, I handle it, internally, but I'm very resourceful. So I always figure out a way to pay bills or something like that. It's not, but the struggle is I don't want to be that person who has to do that anymore. And that would be success for me. That would be the pinnacle for me, is to not have to juggle those balls anymore. And because it's really about what I think about myself in terms of like how I value just things for myself. And I think I've lost that for a lot of reasons, that have nothing to do with gambling. So the gambling is just what I do to, cover that up, those feelings and stuff like that. So I just feel like it's a good time to talk about this now. Things are opening up again. Bars are opening up again. Casinos are opening up again. Just all those things that we were doing before that, can be different now if we really want it to be. And this is not going to be for everybody. Some people are going to, want to go out in a blaze of glory. You know what I mean? They're just going down with the ship or whatever. And that's their choice. It's not right or wrong. Actually, I feel it's not right or wrong. It's everything. There's good and bad in everything. And it's not for me to say or for anybody else to say what others should be doing with their time or money. I personally want to combat this thing. I know it's got a hold of me in a way that I've just let it go. And I don't like how I've, the result of it after all these years. I don't like where I'm at. Some people can gamble, these professional gamblers. I don't know where they get their money. You see them on the poker tours and things like that. I mean, these people, sometimes they look miserable, but sometimes they don't. This is what they do for a living. So some people do just fine, I think. I mean, you may know better than me, but I'm just saying it looks like they're doing fine. So.
I'll say that I always gave the impression that I was loving life when I was gambling and digging myself into six-figure debt, but nobody else knew just how miserable I was. So we shouldn't judge books by the cover, because, hey, everybody's telling a story. We just don't know the full details. So,
I mean, if you're perfectly fine with how whatever you want to do is fine, as long as you're fine with how you feel about it. I think that's the challenge, is to say, I'm not saying don't gamble anymore. I'm saying for me, I don't like how I feel when I do this anymore. And I've ignored it for a long time, and I do want to fix this part of my situation. So, it's not for everybody, and I certainly am not an expert, or, any kind of, doctor like that. But I do have, some personal reasons why I want to get control of things for me. And that's just, hopefully, if somebody's looking for answers, I definitely think that your podcast is a valuable resource. It was the one I found that resonated with me the most. And from that, we can give more resources. And, your website has a resource page, more books on there. I would love to see you talk about books all the time. Just constantly getting resources put on there for people, because, you never know what's going to help that one person get over that hump. So.
Well, this has been awesome. And I want to say thank you, obviously, for coming on. Thanks for being so open and sharing. And I'm excited. I'm excited because I already know where this goes. I've seen this story long enough and enough times in my 10 years that I know how this ends, and it's going to end well. So I'm looking forward to kind of just following along, and look forward to having you back on for updates.
Oh, I'd love to do a temperature check in about 6 months and see what's happened and how.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I will definitely see you on Reddit I am on there. It'll be quick to spot me. The name is Bao Shao, which is the little bit of inside information. I don't know if I've ever talked about this. It's random gibberish that my son used to say when he was like 3 years old. He'd be like, Bao Shao, Bao Shao. I'm like, what is that? And so when I went on Reddit, I went on semi-anonymously, pretty much anonymously at the time. And so I just used his gibberish and it sticks. You can't change I don't think you can change your name. So pick one. You can make anonymous ones. You can do all sorts. You can have 3 different accounts. You can do whatever you want. So
see, that's good information. You can't change your name. So it's good. Pick one that you're going to want.
Find one that you like and stick with it. So
awesome.
Thanks again for coming on. It's been wonderful. Reach out anytime. And I'll link up some ways that if people want to reach out to you to connect, because I know a lot of people reach out, especially it's great having some ladies on the show. And that's when Michelle was on one of the early ones, there were quite a few ladies that reached out and said, hey, can I connect? So we'll figure out a way to make that happen. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm open to anybody who wants to reach out to me. Thanks, Jamie.
Have a great one. And I will see you on Reddit.
All right. Thank you.
Once again, I want to thank Nancy for coming on and being so candid. It was a really great episode. I really enjoyed our discussion, and I wish her nothing but success going forward. And I look forward to checking in 6 months to see how she's doing. Now, remember, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a psychologist. I don't have any letters before or after my name. I'm just a guy that had a gambling problem. So please seek out professional help as it relates to your gambling problem. You deserve it. This is hard enough to deal with, and nobody should have to go through this alone. So please reach out to help. And then finally, music for the show is Something Elated by Broke for Free. It's licensed under the Creative Commons license. Thanks again. My name's Jamie, and I will see you in the next episode.